Genesis 37. Now Jacob lived in the land of Canaan, where his father sojourned. And these are his generations. Joseph, when he was 16 years old, was pasturing the flock with his brothers, when he was still a boy. And he was with the sons of Bilhah and Zilpah, the wives of his father. And he accused his brothers to their father of a most sinful crime. Now Israel loved Joseph above all his sons, because he had conceived him in his old age. And he made him a tunic, woven of many colors. Then his brothers, seeing that he was loved by his father more than all his other sons, hated him, and they were not able to say anything peacefully to him. Then it also happened that he recounted the vision of a dream to his brothers, for which reason a greater hatred began to be nurtured. And he said to them, "Listen to my dream that I saw. I thought we were binding sheaves in the field. And my sheaf seemed to rise up and stand, and your sheaves, standing in a circle, reverenced my sheaf." His brothers responded, "Would you be our king? Or will we be subject to your dominion?" Therefore, this matter of his dreams and words provided kindling to their envy and hatred. Likewise, he saw another dream, which he explained to his brothers, saying, "I saw by a dream, as if the sun, and the moon, and 11 stars were reverencing me." And when he had related this to his father and brothers, his father rebuked him, and he said, "What does it mean to you, this dream that you have seen? Should I, and your mother, and your brothers reverence you upon the earth?" Therefore, his brothers were envious of him. Yet truly, his father considered the matter silently. And while his brothers were lodging at Shechem, pasturing their father's flocks, Israel said to him, "Your brothers are pasturing the sheep at Shechem. Come, I will send you to them." And when he answered, "I am ready," he said to him, "Go, and see if everything is prospering with your brothers and the cattle, and report to me what is happening." So, having been sent from the valley of Hebron, he arrived at Shechem. And a man found him wandering in a field, and he asked him what he was seeking. So he responded, "I seek my brothers. Tell me where they pasture the flocks." And the man said to him, "They have withdrawn from this place. But I heard them saying, 'Let us go to Dothan.'" Therefore, Joseph continued on after his brothers, and he found him at Dothan. And, when they had seen him from afar, before he approached them, they decided to kill him. And they said one to another, "Behold, the dreamer approaches. Come, let us kill him and cast him into the old cistern. And let us say, 'An evil wild beast has devoured him,' and then it will become apparent what his dreams will do for him." But Reuben, on hearing this, strove to free him from their hands, and he said, "Do not take away his life, nor shed blood. But throw him into the cistern, which is in the wilderness, and so keep your hands harmless." But he said this, wanting to rescue him from their hands, so as to return him to his father. And so, as soon as he came to his brothers, they very quickly stripped him of his tunic, which was ankle-length and woven of many colors. And they cast him into an old cistern, which held no water. And sitting down to eat bread, they saw some Ishmaelites, travelers coming from Gilead, with their camels, carrying spices, and resin, and oil of myrrh into Egypt. Therefore, Judah said to his brothers, "What will it profit us, if we kill our brother and conceal his blood? It is better that he be sold to the Ishmaelites, and then our hands will not be defiled. For he is our brother and our flesh." His brothers agreed to his words. And when the Midianite merchants were passing by, they drew him from the cistern, and they sold him to the Ishmaelites for 20 pieces of silver. And these led him into Egypt. And Reuben, returning to the cistern, did not find the boy. And rending his garments, he went to his brothers and said, "The boy is not present, and so where shall I go?" Then they took his tunic, and they dipped it in the blood of a young goat, which they had killed. Sending those who carried it to their father, and they said, "We found this." See whether it is the tunic of your son or not." And when the father acknowledged it, he said, "It is the tunic of my son. An evil wild beast has eaten him, a beast has devoured Joseph." And tearing his garments, he was clothed in haircloth, mourning his son for a long time. Then, when all of his sons gathered together to ease their father's sorrow, he was not willing to accept consolation, but he said, "I will descend in mourning to my son in the underworld." And while he persevered in weeping, the Midianites in Egypt sold Joseph to Potiphar, a eunuch of Pharaoh, instructor of the soldiers. Genesis 38. About the same time, Judah, descending from his brothers, turned toward an Adullamite man, named Hira. And he saw there the daughter of a man called Shua, of Canaan. And taking her as a wife, he entered to her. And she conceived and bore a son, and she called his name Er. And conceiving offspring again, having given birth to a son, she called him Onan. Likewise, she bore a third, whom she called Shelah, after whose birth, she ceased to bear any more. Then Judah gave a wife to his firstborn, whose name was Tamar. And it also happened that the firstborn of Judah, was wicked in the sight of the Lord and was killed by him. Therefore, Judah said to his son Onan, "Enter to the wife of your brother, and associate with her, so that you may raise offspring to your brother." He, knowing that the sons to be born would not be his, when he entered to the wife of his brother, he spilled his seed on the ground, lest children should be born in his brother's name. And for this reason, the Lord struck him down, because he did a detestable thing. Because of this matter, Judah said to his daughter-in-law Tamar, "Be a widow in your father's house, until my son Shelah grows up." For he was afraid, lest he also might die, just as his brothers did. She went away, and she lived in her father's house. Then, after many days had passed, the daughter of Shua, the wife of Judah, died. And when he accepted consolation after his mourning, he went up to the shearers of his sheep at Timnah, he and Hira, the herdsman of the Adullamite flock. And it was reported to Tamar that her father-in-law had gone up to Timnah to shear the sheep. And storing away the garments of her widowhood, she took up a veil. And changing her clothing, she sat at the crossroad that leads to Timnah, because Shelah had grown up, and she had not received him as a husband. And when Judah saw her, he thought her to be a harlot. For she had covered her face, lest she be recognized. And entering to her, he said, "Permit me to join with you." For he did not know her to be his daughter-in-law. And she responded, "What will you give to me, to enjoy me as a concubine?" He said, "I will send you a young goat from the flock." And again, she said, "I will allow what you want, if you give me a pledge, until you may send what you promise." Judah said, "What do you want to be given for a pledge?" She responded, "Your ring and bracelet, and the staff that you hold in your hand." Thereupon, the woman, from one sexual encounter, conceived. And she arose and went away. And storing away the garments that she had taken up, she was clothed in the garments of her widowhood. Then Judah sent a young goat by his shepherd, the Adullamite, so that he might receive the pledge that he had given to the woman. But, when he had not found her, he questioned the men at that place, "Where is the woman who sat at the crossroad?" And they all responded, "There has been no harlot in this place." He returned to Judah, and he said to him, "I did not find her. Moreover, the men of that place told me that a prostitute had never sat there." Judah said, "Let her hold herself to blame. Certainly, she is not able to accuse us of a lie. I sent the young goat that I had promised, and you did not find her." And behold, after 3 months, they reported to Judah, saying, "Tamar, your daughter-in-law, has committed fornication and her abdomen appears to be enlarged." And Judah said, "Produce her, so that she may be burned." But when she was led out to the punishment, she sent to her father-in-law, saying, "I conceived by the man to whom these things belong." recognize whose ring, and bracelet, and staff this is." But he, acknowledging the gifts, said, "She is more just than I am. For I did not deliver her to my son Shelah." However, he knew her no more. Then, at the moment of birth, there appeared twins in the womb. And so, in the very delivery of the infants, one put forth a hand, on which the midwife tied a scarlet thread, saying, "This one will go out first." But in truth, drawing back his hand, the other came out. And the woman said, "Why is the partition divided for you?" And for this reason, she called his name Perez. After this, his brother came out, on whose hand was the scarlet thread. And she called him Zerah. Genesis 39. Meanwhile, Joseph was led into Egypt. And Potiphar, a eunuch of Pharaoh, a leader of the army, an Egyptian man, purchased him from the hand of the Ishmaelites, by whom he was brought. And the Lord was with him, and he was a man who prospered in everything that he did. And he lived in the house of his Lord. Who knew very well that the Lord was with him, and that all the things that were done by him were directed by his hand. And Joseph found favor in the sight of his Lord, and he ministered to him. And, having been placed in charge of everything by him, he governed the house that was entrusted to him and all the things that had been delivered to him. And the Lord blessed the house of the Egyptian, because of Joseph, and he multiplied all his substance, as much in the buildings, as in the fields. Neither did he know anything other than the bread that he ate. Now Joseph was beautiful in form, and stately in appearance. And so, after many days, his mistress cast her eyes on Joseph, and she said, "Sleep with me." And without consenting at all to the wicked act, he said to her, "Behold, my Lord has delivered all things to me, and he does not know what he has in his own house. Neither is there anything which is not in my power, or that he has not delivered to me, except you, for you are his wife. How then can I do this evil act and sin against my God?" With such words as these, throughout each day, the woman was pestering the young man, and he was refusing the adultery. Then it happened, on a certain day, that Joseph entered the house, and he was doing something, without any witnesses. And she, grasping the hem of his garment, said, "Sleep with me." But he, leaving behind the cloak in her hand, fled and went outside. And when the woman saw the garment in her hands and herself being treated with disrespect, she called to herself the men of her house, and she said to them, "Lo, he has brought in a Hebrew man to abuse us. He entered toward me, in order to join with me, and when I had shouted out, and he had heard my voice, he left behind the cloak that I held, and he fled outside." As a proof, therefore, of her fidelity, she retained the cloak, and she showed it to her husband, when he returned home. And she said, "The Hebrew servant, whom you have brought into me, approached me to abuse me. And when he had heard me cry out, he left behind the cloak that I held, and he fled outside." His Lord, upon hearing these things, and having excessive trust in the words of his mate, was very angry. And he delivered Joseph into prison, where the prisoners of the king were kept, and he was enclosed in that place. But the Lord was with Joseph, and, having mercy on him, he gave him favor in the sight of the leader of the prison, who delivered into his hand all the prisoners who were held in custody. And whatever was done, was under him. Neither did he himself know anything, having entrusted all things to him. For the Lord was with him, and he directed everything that he did. Genesis 40. While these things were going on, it happened that two eunuchs, the cupbearer of the king of Egypt, and the miller of grain, offended their lord. And Pharaoh, being angry with them, sent them to the prison of the leader of the military, in which Joseph also was a prisoner. But the keeper of the prison delivered them to Joseph, who ministered to them also. Some little time passed by, while they were held in custody. And they both saw a similar dream on one night, whose interpretations should be related to one another. And when Joseph had entered to them in the morning, and had seen them sad, he consulted them, saying, "Why is your expression sadder today than usual?" They responded, "We have seen a dream, and there is no one to interpret it for us." And Joseph said to them, "Doesn't interpretation belong to God? Recount for me what you have seen." The chief cupbearer explained his dream first. "I saw before me a vine, on which were 3 shoots, which grew little by little into buds, and, after the flowers, it matured into grapes. And the cup of Pharaoh was in my hand. Therefore, I took the grapes, and I pressed them into the cup that I held, and I handed the cup to Pharaoh." Joseph responded, "This is the interpretation of the dream. The 3 shoots are the next 3 days. After which Pharaoh will remember your service, and he will restore you to your former position. And you will give him the cup according to your office, as you were accustomed to do before. Only remember me, when it will be well with you, and do me this mercy, to suggest to Pharaoh to lead me out of this prison. For I have been stolen from the land of the Hebrews, and here, innocently, I was cast into the pit." The chief miller of grain, seeing that he had wisely unraveled the dream, said, "I also saw a dream, that I had 3 baskets of meal above my head. And in one basket, which was the highest, I carried all foods that are made by the art of baking, and the birds ate from it." Joseph responded, "This is the interpretation of the dream. The 3 baskets are the next 3 days. After which Pharaoh will carry away your head, and also suspend you from a cross, and the birds will tear your flesh." The 3rd day thereafter was the birthday of Pharaoh. And making a great feast for his servants, he remembered, during the banquet, the chief cupbearer and the chief miller of grain. And he restored one to his place, to present him the cup. The other he hanged on a gallows, and thus the truth of the interpreter of dreams was proven. And although he advanced with so much prosperity, the chief cupbearer forgot his interpreter of dreams. Genesis 41. After 2 years, Pharaoh saw a dream. He thought himself to be standing above a river, from which ascended 7 cows, exceedingly beautiful and stout. And they pastured in marshy places. Likewise, another 7 emerged from the river, filthy and thoroughly emaciated. And they pastured on the same bank of the river, in green places. And they devoured those whose appearance and condition of body was so wonderful. Pharaoh, having been awakened, slept again, and he saw another dream. 7 ears of grain sprung up on one stalk, full and well formed. Likewise, other ears of grain, of the same number, rose up, thin and struck with blight, devouring all the beauty of the first. Pharaoh, when he awakened after his rest, and when morning arrived, being terrified with fear, sent to all the interpreters of Egypt and to all of the wise men. And when they were summoned, he explained to them his dream, but there was no one who could interpret it. Then at last the chief cupbearer, remembering, said, "I confess my sin." The king, being angry with his servants, ordered me and the chief miller of grain to be forced into the prison of the leader of the military. There, in one night, both of us saw a dream presaging the future. In that place, there was a Hebrew, a servant of the same commander of the military, to whom we explained our dreams. Whatever we heard was proven afterwards by the event of the matter. For I was restored to my office, and he was suspended on a cross. Immediately, by the king's authority, Joseph was led out of prison, and they shaved him. And changing his apparel, they presented him to him. And he said to him, "I have seen dreams, and there is no one who can unfold them. I have heard that you are very wise at interpreting these." Joseph responded, "Apart from me, God will respond favorably to Pharaoh." Therefore, Pharaoh explained what he had seen, I thought myself to be standing on the bank of the river. And 7 cows climbed up from the river, exceedingly beautiful and full of flesh. And they grazed in a pasture of a marshy greenery. And behold, there followed after these, another 7 cows, with such deformity and emaciation as I had never seen in the land of Egypt. These devoured and consumed the first, giving no indication of being full. But they remained in the same state of emaciation and squalor, awakening, but being weighed down into sleep again. I saw a dream. 7 ears of grain sprang up on one stalk, full and very beautiful. Likewise, another 7, thin and struck with blight, rose up from the stalk. And they devoured the beauty of the first. I explained this dream to the interpreters, and there is no one who can unfold it. Joseph responded, "The dream of the king is one. What God will do, he has revealed to Pharaoh. The 7 beautiful cows, and the 7 full ears of grain, are 7 years of abundance. And so the force of the dreams is understood to be the same. Likewise, the 7 thin and emaciated cows, which ascended after them, and the 7 thin ears of grain, which were struck with the burning wind, are 7 approaching years of famine. These will be fulfilled in this order. Behold, there will arrive 7 years of great fertility throughout the entire land of Egypt. After this, there will follow another 7 years, of such great barrenness that all the former abundance will be delivered into oblivion. For the famine will consume all the land. And the greatness of this destitution will cause the greatness of the abundance to be lost. Now, as to what you saw the second time, it is a dream pertaining to the same thing. It is an indication of its firmness, because the word of God shall be done, and it shall be completed swiftly. Now therefore, let the king provide a wise and industrious man, and place him over the land of Egypt, so that he may appoint overseers throughout all the regions. And let a 5th part of the fruits, throughout the 7 fertile years, that now have already begun to occur, be gathered into storehouses. And let all the grain be stored away, under the power of Pharaoh, and let it be kept in the cities. And let it be prepared for the future famine of 7 years, which will oppress Egypt, and then the land will not be consumed by destitution. The counsel pleased Pharaoh and all his ministers. And he said to them, "Would we be able to find another such man, who is full of the Spirit of God?" Therefore, he said to Joseph, "Because God has revealed to you all that you have said, would I be able to find anyone wiser and as much like you? You will be over my house, and to the authority of your mouth, all the people will show obedience. Only in one way, in the throne of the kingdom, will I go before you." And again, Pharaoh said to Joseph, "Behold, I have appointed you over the entire land of Egypt." And he took the ring from his own hand, and he gave it into his hand. And he clothed him with a robe of fine linen, and he placed a necklace of gold around his neck. And he caused him to ascend upon his 2nd swift chariot, with the herald proclaiming that everyone should bend their knee before him, and that they should know that he was governor over the entire land of Egypt. Likewise, the king said to Joseph, "I am Pharaoh, apart from your authority, no one will move hand or foot in all the land of Egypt." And he changed his name and called him, in the Egyptian tongue, Savior of the world, and he gave him as a wife, Asenath, the daughter of Potipherah, priest of Heliopolis. And so Joseph went out into the land of Egypt. And he traveled throughout the regions of Egypt. And the fertility of the 7 years arrived. And when the grain fields were reduced to sheaves, these were gathered into the storehouses of Egypt. And now all the abundance of grain was stored away in every city. And there was such a great abundance of wheat that it was comparable to the sands of the sea, and its bounty exceeded all measure. Then, before the famine arrived, Joseph had 2 sons born, whom Asenath, the daughter of Potipherah, priest of Heliopolis, bore for him. And he called the name of the firstborn Manasseh, saying, "God has caused me to forget all my labors in the house of my father." Likewise, he named the second Ephraim, saying, God has caused me to increase in the land of my poverty. And so, when the 7 years of fertility that occurred in Egypt had passed, the 7 years of destitution, which Joseph had predicted, began to arrive. And the famine prevailed throughout the whole world, but there was bread in all the land of Egypt. And being hungry, the people cried out to Pharaoh, asking for provisions. And he said to them, Go to Joseph, and do whatever he will tell you. Then the famine increased daily in all the land. And Joseph opened all of the storehouses and sold to the Egyptians, for the famine had oppressed them also. And all the provinces came to Egypt, to buy food and to temper the misfortune of their destitution. Genesis 42. Then Jacob, hearing that food was being sold in Egypt, said to his sons, Why are you negligent? I have heard that wheat is being sold in Egypt. Go down and buy necessities for us, so that we may be able to live, and not be consumed by destitution. And so, when 10 brothers of Joseph went down to buy grain in Egypt, Benjamin was kept at home by Jacob, who said to his brothers, Lest perhaps he may suffer harm on the journey. And they entered into the land of Egypt with the others who traveled to buy. For the famine was in the land of Canaan. And Joseph was governor in the land of Egypt, and grain was sold under his direction to the people. And when his brothers had reverenced him, and he had recognized them, he spoke harshly, as if to foreigners, questioning them, Where did you come from? And they responded, From the land of Canaan, to buy necessary provisions. And although he knew his brothers, he was not known by them. And remembering the dreams, which he had seen in another time, he said to them, You are scouts. You have come in order to see which parts of the land are weaker. And they said, It is not so, my lord. But your servants have arrived in order to buy food. We are all sons of one man. We have come in peace, nor do any of your subjects devise evil. And he answered them, It is otherwise. You have come to examine the unguarded parts of this land. But they said, We, your servants, are 12 brothers, the sons of one man in the land of Canaan. The youngest is with our father, the other is not living. He said, This is just as I have said. You are scouts. I will now continue to put you to the test. By the health of Pharaoh, you will not depart from here, until your youngest brother arrives. Send one of you and bring him. But you will be in chains, until what you have said is proven to be either true or false. Otherwise, by the health of Pharaoh, you are scouts. Therefore, he delivered them into custody for 3 days. Then, on the 3rd day, he brought them out of prison, and he said, Do as I have said, and you will live. For I fear God. If you are peaceful, let one of your brothers be bound in prison. Then you may go away and carry the grain that you have bought to your houses. And bring your youngest brother to me, so that I may be able to test your words, and you may not die. They did as he had said. And they spoke to one another, We deserve to suffer these things, because we have sinned against our brother, seeing the anguish of his soul, when he begged us and we would not listen. For that reason, this tribulation has come upon us. And Reuben, one of them, said, Did not I say to you, Do not sin against the boy, and you would not listen to me? See, his blood is exacted. But they did not know that Joseph understood, because he was speaking to them through an interpreter. And he turned himself away briefly and wept. And returning, he spoke to them. And taking Simeon, and binding him in their presence, he ordered his ministers to fill their sacks with wheat, and to replace each one's money in their sacks, and to give them, in addition, provisions for the way. And they did so. Then, having loaded their donkeys with the grain, they set out. And one of them, opening a sack to give his beast of burden fodder at the inn, looked upon the money at the sack's mouth. And he said to his brothers, My money has returned to me. See, it is held in the sack." And they were astonished and troubled, and they said to one another, "What is this that God has done to us?" And they went to their father Jacob in the land of Canaan, and they explained to him all the things that had befallen them, saying, "The Lord of the land spoke harshly to us, and he considered us to be scouts of the province." And we answered him, "We are peaceful, and we do not intend any treachery. We are 12 brothers conceived of one father. One is not living, the youngest is with our father in the land of Canaan." And he said to us, "Thus will I prove that you are peaceful. Release one of your brothers to me, and take necessary provisions for your houses, and go away. And bring your youngest brother to me, so that I may know that you are not scouts. And this one, who is held in chains, you may be able to receive again. And thereafter, you shall have permission to buy what you want." Having said this, when they poured out their grain, each found his money tied to the mouth of his sack. And all were terrified together. Their father Jacob said, "You have caused me to be without children. Joseph is not living, Simeon is held in chains, and Benjamin you would carry away. All these evils have fallen back upon me." And Reuben answered him, "Put my 2 sons to death, if I do not lead him back to you. Deliver him into my hand, and I will restore him to you." But he said, "My son will not go down with you. His brother is dead, and he is left alone. If any adversity will befall him in the land to which you travel, you would lead my gray hairs down with sorrow to the grave." Thank you for watching. If you like the content on this channel, please press subscribe, the like button or comment below. We'd love to get your tips. See you next time.